you. Thank you, Santuja. And congratulations, Abhishek and team, for such an eventful year. I think this has been a year of tremendous impact, frankly, above all, where the platform has almost become the face of what's happening with AI in India. So, congratulations for that. And welcome, Nandan. Welcome, Mr. Sawhney. Apologies for the slight delay, and I hope we'll make up for it very quickly. Uh, Both of you don't need any introductions. All I'm going to say is I'm tremendously privileged to have the two of you for this extremely important discussion on how India builds its leadership in AI, because both of you are leaders who not only have the ability to see ahead, see what doesn't exist for most of us, but you have the ability to also create the future. Nandan, I'm going to start with you. The Prime Minister gave us the charter to say India has to be a global leader in AI. I think the last 1.5 years, we have seen the true potential of AI, frankly. And we've also realized that the race to AI is just about beginning. It is a very long marathon, first of all, and it is still at a very early stage where you can decisively say that so and so has won. I do believe that it's still open for disruption. So given that, first of all, do you agree? And if yes, then what should be the role for India? How do we become the disruptor in this space?
Me on this panel, and it's a great event. I think India is actually, as you rightly said, on the cusp of some major AI innovation. When you think about it, in the last few years, at least at the government and country level, our focus has been on transactional systems and how to make transactions more efficient and more effective. And we've been able to do a huge amount of digitization across the board. But as a byproduct of that, we have huge data now across systems. And I think the time is right to apply AI across the board to India's most challenging issues, whether it's healthcare, education, or whether it's judicial pendency or whatever. So I think we are well placed on that front. Similarly, on the business front, I think Indian companies are now looking at using AI to solve problems in a big way across the world. And especially after this post-pandemic digital acceleration that is now going on. So I think both on the business side as well as on the government and national side, we are well placed to really apply AI in a very unique way to India's challenges as well as opportunities.
Nandan, if there is one thing you would pick, saying this is a great opportunity to go disrupt the world or disrupt the world's game plan, any thoughts on what that would be? You've done it with Aadhaar. We are now seeing it with UPI. What should be that disruption opportunity for AI?
I think the work that METI is doing on the National Language Translation Mission, to my mind, is a disruptive opportunity, because India is unique in the fact that it has such a large number of languages, all commingling, and most Indians speak 2 to 3 languages and so on. So I think creating the world's best language capability, whether it's speech, language, text to speech, whether it's language to language, I think India is well placed to show the world how we can do it very well. And I think Mr. Sawhney and his colleagues at METI are focused on that.
I cannot agree more with you. I think that is such a brilliant and important point. Mr. Sawhney, I will come to you. You have been the architect of AI mission for India and how AI will become real in India. Could you share with us a little bit about your vision to take this forward, and what would be the key building blocks of this mission?
Debjani, and my congratulations also to Abhishek, Debjani's team, and my own team for bringing this INDIAai portal so far from where it started. And it's been a very challenging year, but it's also time for us to pick up the things that we were already doing, we had started, and get into it with a renewed sense of urgency and tremendous amount of new energy. The AI mission is taking shape. Earlier, the AI strategy for India was unveiled in a document released by the NITI Aayog, and that had outlined the key areas in which India would need to use AI, the core research that needs to happen to give us depth, not just breadth of coverage, but tremendous amount of depth in terms of technology and the insights into the new technologies that are emerging, keeping up with the rest of the world in that particular area, and challenging the new frontiers. There's emphasis on infrastructure, because infrastructure is required. Compute for AI is a massive requirement, and it's a different kind of a compute requirement. It's high performance computing that is required, and also a very specific AI petaflops. So machines are infrastructure with AI petaflops, which are specially designed to cater to the AI requirements. But I would say the single most important area is to apply AI to actually improve services, to improve the quality of delivery, to improve the quality of decision making, to also bring all the stakeholders into the activity in our key domains. So it's while core research in AI also happens through the NMICPS mission, which is already piloted by the Department of Science and Technology with the participation of all the premier institutions in India. In the AI mission that is now taking shape, it is the applied parts of AI which will get primary focus. These will happen on top of the national public digital platforms that are also starting to take shape. Nandanji is here, so we don't have to, we must start with what Aadhaar has done to emerge as the role model, as a national public digital platform, and then followed by UPI, where a very lightweight interface compared to the really heavy applications that we used to earlier make. A lightweight interface could actually knit up all of banking system in India and make it possible for new age service providers to apply new technologies and provide services which the likes of which have never been seen before. And the exponential growth that has greeted the availability of UPI is a testament to the power of this idea. Open systems, not closed systems. Open systems where entry at any point is possible, where the best of the breed can always rise to the surface, even if some dominant entities are already there in the platform. The entry barrier is very low, and it's possible for new ideas, for new energy to make a mark. So these platforms are now moving on to cover domains like health, the National Public Digital Health Mission, the National Public Digital Platform for Health, in a sense, the universal health interface, not the universal payments interface, something which will again knit together all the players in the health ecosystem, whether it is public hospitals, private hospitals, labs, blood banks, or whatever personnel and professionals and healthcare seekers, and all of them, once they are able to come together on a platform, the first thing it does for us is to organize the data in a systematic form across the entire country. And as soon as you have a way of pulling up the data and systematically making it available to the users, to researchers, to startups, it is magic. And it's at India scale, which we must recognize that our primary strength in India is India scale. Yep. It is not technology. Technology plays on top of the India scale. The data comes from India scale, the demand comes from India scale, and it creates such a powerful combination when we have data, we have demand, we have talent, we have a supply of services, that tremendous amount of innovation can happen on top of that. So as we move forward, we see the emergence of similar open national public digital platforms in healthcare, in education, in urban governance, in logistics, in something which is horizontal like language technologies, where not only participation happens, but use of all the emerging technologies is facilitated. Because you have the scale. So this is going to be the primary focus of the INDIAai mission AI mission for India, and then we will have some challenges, some moonshot projects or INDIAai projects where we actually tackle very specific challenges through industry participation in a sort of a challenge type of a format. So these are the key aspects of what we are formulating.
Glad you brought the focus back on actual application, impact, scale. Because I honestly do believe, my biggest takeaway from the pandemic is leadership is not going to be defined by talk or papers. Leadership is going to be defined by actual impact. How big a problem are you able to solve? And Nandan, no one gets scale better than you. So my question to you, Mr. Sawhney described the national platformization strategy, which is a key driver of which should become the key driver of scale. But do you agree with that, and do you think it's on the right track? Any advice? How do we replicate the magic of Aadhaar in AI? Because face it, to date, we have not been able to scale any AI deployment.
Debjani, I don't totally agree with that. There's a lot of population scale AI happening at this point, and much of that is happening in the government sector. For example,
conversational. You're right.
So one is in Aadhaar example, they have this ability called face authentication, where they compare your photograph to the photograph in the Aadhaar database and then authenticate you just like a fingerprint or a OTP. And that's entirely built with AI. And the AI, it's a national model. It's a model for a billion people, and it's trained on the server. And they do AI on the edge by doing liveness testing on your smartphone using AI, so that there is no fraud. So already Aadhaar face authentication is using AI. The GST is using AI to catch fraud and increase tax revenues. And my belief is that one of the reasons we are seeing tax buoyancy in the last few months is a lot of fraud detection by catching fake invoicing and so on. So that is again a population scale implementation. The Supreme Court is using neural machine translation for 9 Indian languages across all the courts, where they can translate from English to Hindi, Hindi to English, Hindi to Tamil, whatever. That is another big thing. NPCI is applying it for fraud in payments. And in education, Gujarat now is applying it to convert, using OCR, converting written things to digital. So it's actually a lot of stuff is happening in India, Debjani, at this moment, which is very, very state of the art. Just one thing I want to add to Ajay's point. We obviously have the population scale demographics, we have the demand, and we also have data because over the last several years, because we're putting so many transactional systems, we now have the data to feed. And then the important thing is AI also is that a lot of the AI models are available as open source and free to use. In this regard, companies have done a lot. Google put out a product called BERT for machine language translation. Recently, IBM put out a thing called Project CodeNet for converting from old languages to new programming languages. And Facebook has done something called Wave to Vec, which is for speech recognition. And at least so far, in the AI world, a lot of big models are available as open source. So when you combine the models, the data we have, the people we have, the demand we have to address population scale challenges, that is the way to go in the.
Thank you. And I absolutely stand corrected on that one, Nandan. I completely agree with you. We do have, but just a follow-up question to you, Nandan, is how do we enable scale in critical areas like, say, agriculture or healthcare? What's missing here, if anything, and what do we have to do differently as we think about AI deployments in these verticals?
The lesson we have learned from is that you have to think through the platform and lightweight architecture to get scale. Like Ada was actually does only one thing, just says there's Debjani, but on that we built an entire whole transformation plan. Similarly, UPI is a very light payment interface which now does 2 billion transactions, 2.7 billion transactions a month. So similarly in AI, putting in the architecture properly so that all these things can then start talking to each other. And again, to go back to the NLTM, such an architecture is being planned in the NLTM where everybody contributes data and everybody benefits from the data. So once you create this kind of crowdsourcing where everybody pitches in and everybody benefits, very quickly you can scale it up. So thinking through the architecture for national collaboration on AI and how do you make sure all the data is available to everybody? How do we make sure all the models are there? How do we make sure that we are benchmarking? So there are some things we have to do national level.
And I think both you and Mr. Sawhney are absolutely in sync, because I don't want to steal your thunder, Mr. Sawhney, but I do know that he is thinking of this architecture-led approach. We call it platformization, but for every single vertical. And I think if we can all focus our energies towards getting that done, we absolutely will achieve something pretty phenomenal. Mr. Sawhney, I'm going to come to you on this point of data. Apart from demand and scale, the two other things that often gets talked about are data and talent. Now, talent, India has a very good plan. METI is sponsoring, championing that entire plan to drive and we are on track. We kind of demand we are seeing for skilling to METI's and NASSCOM's Future Skills platform. I think we are very much on track to hit our goal of 4 million people skilled. But when it comes to data, while we do have a lot of data, we still, our startups, the biggest complaint or biggest script they have is we are finding it difficult to access data. I do know you're taking steps to address that problem, and one of the things you're working on is NPD, etc. So talk a little bit about how you're thinking through of breaking the data silos that exist and opening up access to data for industry and innovators, academia.
As the public digital platforms take shape, I think providing access to data is one of their key objectives, and providing access to data not only to the direct service providers but also to other stakeholders, to researchers, to startups, to small big companies. What the digital platform does in essence is create one location where it's not just government providing its services to the people. Within government also, that there are many layers, many levels. Central government provides services, the state governments provide services, the city government provides services, the rural governments provide services. Bringing them all on one platform itself is a big thing. But by making data available and by making it available in a systematic form, it is not just available where it can be used in a very irresponsible manner. For instance, Aadhaar, look at Aadhaar. Aadhaar uses open APIs. But open APIs are used in a manner which is very responsible, and it's a laid down manner. It's a manner where people commit themselves to certain do's and don'ts. It's a manner which is sort of audited by themselves to make sure that they are compliant with the responsible handling of what they come across. Now, we are applying that to all the data sets. Number one, bringing the data sets together. Number two, making access to data available. Number three, helping people outside the government, companies outside the government to create new innovations, new services, which simply stack up on top of what the government itself provides, and does so in a competitive manner. So it's a very beautiful way. It's not just provision of data, but actually rewarding what you can do with data after innovation and after applying the new technologies and AI. So that is the ecosystem that is taking shape, and it holds tremendous promise. It's this which makes it possible for India to have a dozen or more than 10 unicorns in a month. Who else or where else can you actually see that happening? We've just got started. So each one of our digital platforms, with the combination of data, the APIs, the talent, the sort of data exchange framework, the service framework, the identity framework, each one of these, I would say, is a lab where at least a dozen, if not more, unicorns will emerge in each one of these sectors.
Absolutely agree. Mrs. Sawhney, I'm going to throw another question at you. And there are a lot of, by the way, questions from the audience on this particular topic too. When we talk about AI, we cannot not talk about ethics, and we cannot not talk about responsible use of AI, responsible build of AI. So what is your thinking on how, everyone is talking about it across the world, but very few people are actually belling the cat in terms of coming out with what is needed. But I think India has already taken first steps towards ensuring accountability, towards ensuring good governance, towards ensuring compliance. So what is your thought on how we build out a regulatory process framework to ensure that we don't allow misuse of AI, especially given the diverse audience that we have?
The initial projects that have happened are giving us a cue in that direction. The manner in which in Aadhaar or in GSTN or in UPI or in health, the data is already made available, but it is made available for use in a responsible manner. And I think where the policy is laid down with the public interest in mind, but the implementation is left through competitive forces. With some basic norms that are laid down. The do's and don'ts are laid down, and those do's and don'ts are auditable. And it's not audit to be done by the government. It's audit to be done by professionals. The way we do, financial audit of companies. It is not government which does it, but everyone knows how things have to be done. They know what to adhere to, and it is auditable. It is certifiable that yes, you have actually used your access in a responsible manner. You've used your privileges in a responsible manner. So that is the way I think the ecosystem is taking shape. And we are learning as we move from one program to another, because we are building the layers one by one. And the regulation, I would not say it requires very active regulation. But a self-regulation kind of formats, mechanisms, norms, practices, those have to come in place, and those have to become industry-wide, accepted and used.
Your thoughts on what should be the role of industry in achieving this, industry in India, in achieving this goal of AI leadership? What should we drive? Focus on innovation, focus on responsible framework.
So I think industry has a huge role to play. I think Indian industry is also already at the cutting edge of applying AI to global issues. So they can contribute, their thinking, architecture thinking. They can contribute open source products. They can contribute data models. So I think there's a lot to be done by industry, and I'm very happy that NASSCOM is taking this leadership along with METI and NEGD. And so I think, and there's a big, as I said, there's a big role for cross-fertilization of ideas, because there's a certain way that AI has evolved in the US, there's a certain way that AI has evolved in China, but we have a chance to have a third way of AI,
Yeah.
which is neither entirely private sector led nor entirely, in a walled garden, but in a much more open, collaborative way, where government and private sector come forward and build joint architectures which allow everyone to contribute, but nobody.
And Mr. Sawhney, I can't let you go without the last question, which is your advice to the INDIAai team in terms of what's next. What should we do bigger, better, different? What's your advice to us? What's the guidance?
AI is a space where new innovations, new activities are happening very rapidly across the globe. So one important part that we have to play is to track what is happening, what's the most exciting new innovation that has become visible, whether it is in the Western sector or the Eastern sector. What can we learn from that? What are the open open data sets? What are the open models which can be reused by us? We need not focus entirely on developing something entirely on our own. So one is that. The second is to be able to benchmark what we are doing vis-a-vis what is happening across the globe. If we are at say 55 compared to the best in the world, which is at 100, I think we need to know. So we need to be constantly aware of where we are. Are we making progress in the forward direction, and how far behind are we vis-a-vis the leaders, the global leaders in a particular area? So this is the second aspect, I think, that needs to happen. And then, of course, within India, how do we bring in thinking which is able to bridge the distance between fabulous amount of research which is happening in the premier institutions and actual application of that research, which can benefit a farmer, or which can benefit a TB patient, or which can benefit a person who is looking for a particular resource close to his place of living or place of work. So how can we actually be a bridge between those? How do we encourage that to happen in a significant way? Then also by bringing in awareness about this overall data strategy, the sense that it makes, the manner in which this is the responsible way to go forward with AI, and that there is a role for everyone. So we need to acquaint stakeholders with the kind of role they can play, with the opportunities that are opening up, with the services that are becoming available. Also be able to poll around for what kind of services we would like to see which make use of artificial intelligence, so that we can actually get back to the service providers with those insights. And finally, I think some work which is happening on responsible use of AI, ethical use of AI, we need to sort of spread it around so that it again becomes industry-wide rather than in some centers of excellence or stranded locations. And finally, I think we must celebrate success. We must celebrate success. We must celebrate what our startups do. We must celebrate what departments do. We must celebrate what people who are unsung heroes in many of these. The people who actually collate the data, who build the data exchanges, who build the APIs, who facilitate in the background. They are never in the front. We must celebrate not only the successes, but also bring out stories of the people who are behind those successes.
What a beautiful point, and I think you've just given such wonderful advice for the team to think through, which will move us to the next level. Thank you, Mr. Sawhney, and I feel as part of what you call your Team India, I absolutely feel very confident that we do have the right building blocks in place under your leadership to achieve our goal of becoming a global leader, not just an important player, but a global leader in AI. I mean, the platformization strategy, the data strategy, the talent strategy that we are building, the thinking on inclusive AI, responsible AI, and last but not the least, I think what Meti has done is really pulling all the ecosystem together. From academia to industry, we truly feel part of one team that has one goal to achieve. And I think with that kind of a mindset, with the kind of passion that exists across the stakeholders, I don't believe anything or anyone can hold us back. So thank you for your leadership. Thank you for the passion you ignite in the entire ecosystem. And looking forward to achieving this charter with you.
Yeah, thank you for your support, and thank you for conducting this session so well and organizing the India AI effort so beautifully. Thank you so much.
Joining us
Thank you,
today.
everybody. Bye bye. Bye bye. Bye, Ajay. Bye, Sindhuja. Bye.